The elevator doors open on the 44th floor and Imani Reese does not move. Not because she is afraid. Because she is reading the room before she steps into it, the way her grandmother taught her to read any room, any table, any space that was not built with her in mind. You see it first. Then you walk in. What she sees: dark wood paneling. Crystal decanters on a table long enough to seat a small courtroom. 5 men already seated who do not look up when the doors part. And at the head of the table, a man she has studied for 3 weeks from public records, SEC filings, and 2 court transcripts that were sealed but not quite sealed enough. A man whose family name has been connected to more than investment portfolios for a very long time. Nico Marcone. She steps out of the elevator. The doors close behind her. Here is what nobody at Whitfield Capital told her this morning when they dropped her name into a meeting slot that belonged to someone else. On December 16, 1985, Paul Castellano walked out of his black Lincoln Town car on East 46th Street in Manhattan, right outside Sparks Steakhouse, and was shot dead before he reached the door. 6 gunmen. Coordinated. Finished in seconds. The sidewalk stayed open to foot traffic for the rest of the night. The city barely flinched. What rose from that killing did not look like what it was. The men who moved into that vacuum did not come in loud. They came in quiet. They put on better suits. They moved their money into real estate funds and holding companies and infrastructure deals. They built relationships with people who had never heard the name Castellano and had no reason to. They kept every rule that mattered. They just stopped saying the rules out loud. The lesson that killing taught every serious operator in this city was not about violence. It was about something colder and more permanent than violence. It was about the catastrophic cost of misreading the room. Castellano's people did not see what was coming because they had already decided what was in front of them was manageable. They assessed the situation wrong. They paid for it completely. Nico Marcone was 7 years old in 1985. His father watched that story unfold from 3 blocks away. His grandfather had shaken hands with men who sat at the same tables as the men who gave the order. The Marcone family did not inherit Castellano's seat. They inherited his lesson. And for 30 years, that lesson has been the foundation of every decision Nico Marcone has made in every room he has ever entered. Never misread what is in front of you. Never let someone else's description of a person replace your own judgment of them. The moment you stop seeing clearly is the moment everything you built becomes available to whoever is still paying attention. This is what Imani Reese is walking toward. 25 years old. Deep dark brown skin that catches the warm chandelier light and holds it. Soft highlights rising on her cheekbones and forehead. Oval face. Defined cheekbones. A soft jawline. Almond-shaped dark brown eyes framed by lashes long enough to cast their own shadows. Full lips set in an expression that gives away nothing. Shoulder-length naturally curly hair with the kind of volume that does not apologize for itself. Her orange dress is the color of late afternoon fire, wide supportive straps sitting comfortably on her shoulders, a softly scooped neckline framing her collarbone and décolletage with the quiet confidence of something tailored for exactly this body. The structured bodice shapes without compressing. Vertical seam lines trace her full curves with precision. The satin fabric gathers in gentle ruching at her waist and flows over her full hips in an A-line fall that moves with her, not against her. The hem lands at mid-calf. She looks like someone who dressed for a room that deserves her. Her mother's gold ring is on her right hand. The folder she built from scratch over 3 weeks is under her arm. Hi viewers. Have you ever been handed a situation that was designed to make you fail, and you walked in anyway because you knew something they didn't know you knew? Drop that in the comments right now. I want every single one. Because what you are about to watch happen in this room has never been told quite like this. Here is how the morning started. 7:43 a.m. A 2-line email from Phillip Drummond, VP of Strategic Partnerships at Whitfield Capital. The man who has managed to be present at every company's success and conveniently absent from every assignment that carried real risk. Change of plans. Reese covers the Marcone sit-down. 10 a.m. conference level, Meridian Tower. No explanation. No briefing. No call. Just her name dropped into a slot that belonged to Garrett Holloway, the firm's golden boy closer, Yale-educated, double-cuffed, the man they put in front of rooms they actually wanted to win. She is not supposed to win this room. She is supposed to occupy it. To be the name on record when the deal falls apart. To be the story Whitfield tells itself afterward. We sent someone, it didn't close, not our fault. Clean. Simple. Her reputation absorbs the cost so theirs does not have to. What they did not consider when they made that calculation is that Imani Reese spent the last 3 weeks building the entire proposal that Garrett has been presenting as his own thinking. Every number. Every scenario. Every clause. She is the only person in this building who knows what Nico Marcone is going to ask for before he asks it. She crosses the marble floor toward the long table. The men do not look up. And by the time she understood the full shape of what had been done to her this morning, it was already too late for any of them to take it back. Nobody offers her a seat. There are 8 chairs around that table. 5 of them taken. 2 empty on the sides. One at the far end, offset from the table's center, angled slightly away from the main sideline, the kind of position you assign when you want someone present but not equal. That chair has her name on it in every way except the literal. She takes it. She sets her folder down. The sound it makes is small and precise, and she lets it be the only sound in the room for 1 full second. Nico Marcone sits at the head of the table the way certain men sit, not in the chair so much as behind it, using it the way a judge uses a bench, as an extension of an authority that does not require the furniture but accepts it as its due. He is smaller than the photographs. Compact. Dark suit, no tie, a watch on his left wrist that catches the overhead light once, and does not flash again because he is not the kind of man who lets things flash. His hands rest flat on the table. He does not look at her when she sits down. Nobody does. That is the first signal. Not the quiet sound from the man to Marcone's right, mid-40s, a jaw that looks like it was set in concrete, the kind of face that has made a career out of deciding who deserves to be in rooms like this one. Not the younger man across from her, early 30s, a suit that costs what some people make in a month, who picks up his pen and immediately sets it down again and looks at a fixed point past her left shoulder. Those are reactions. They mean she registered. The silence is different. The silence is an arrangement. A room that has already written the ending and is now waiting for the middle to catch up. One of Marcone's men distributes folders. Crystal water glasses get placed in front of every person at the table. Every person except her. She does not look at the glasses. She opens her folder, uncaps her pen, and reviews her own first page, not because she needs to, but because she will not give this room the satisfaction of watching her wait for it to acknowledge her existence. She is here. She is working. The room's opinion of that is not her concern. The chandelier above throws warm light across the room. It catches the satin of her orange dress, a soft, controlled gleam that moves when she moves and settles when she settles. 3 of the men notice it. None of them show it the same way. The man with the concrete jaw says something low to the man beside him. In Italian. She catches perhaps half of it. She took 2 semesters at NYU and retained more than she ever let on. She retains most things she is not supposed to. She decides, right then, to keep that particular card face down. Marcone turns the last page of whatever he has been reading. He sets it down with 2 fingers. He looks up. But not at her. He scans the room the way a man scans a room when he owns it, not checking who is there, but checking whether the room is as he left it. Whether anything has moved without his permission. His eyes reach her end of the table. They stop. Not long. Not dramatically. 1 second, maybe 2. The assessment of a man trained since childhood to see what is actually in front of him, not what he was told to expect, not what the room suggests, but what is actually there. His face reveals nothing. He moves on. But the stop happened. From somewhere near the far window, barely there, bitten off almost before it finishes itself, a sound. Small. Private. The kind that does not need an audience because it knows its audience is already in on the joke. Imani does not turn toward it. She does not change the position of her pen or the angle of her shoulders or the expression on her face by a single degree. Her almond-shaped eyes stay fixed on her page. She registers the sound. She files it. Not as a wound. As information. The meeting hadn't even started. And they had already decided how it would end. She pieces it together in real time, right there at that table, while the room arranges itself around her like it does not notice she is assembling the full picture. This is how Imani Reese thinks under pressure. Not in straight lines. In structures. Her mind builds the architecture of a situation the way other people build furniture, from the outside in, checking every joint, testing every load-bearing point, not stopping until she knows exactly where the weight is and who put it there. The weight, this morning, was placed by Phillip Drummond. She knows this because 6 weeks ago, she watched Garrett Holloway walk into Drummond's corner office with a coffee and walk out 20 minutes later with an assignment he had not earned. Garrett's preparation for the Marcone deal consisted of 3 things: the 17-page brief that Imani built on her own time, a dinner at a steakhouse with a contact who had attended one Marcone Group charity event, and a new pair of shoes for the meeting. She knows this because she built the brief. Every page. The risk modeling. The 3-tier returns analysis. The trust structure she designed because Marcone's pattern across 6 prior deals showed a hard preference for equity arrangements that protect liquidity on the downside, a detail not in any analyst note, not in any public filing, but visible if you read the court documents carefully enough. The one sealed but not quite sealed enough. She handed it to Garrett on a Tuesday. He took it the way certain men take things, with the ease of someone accepting what they believe they are always supposed to receive. Then, 3 days ago, she overheard a phone call in the break room on the 31st floor. Phillip Drummond. His voice carrying the way voices carry when the person has never once had to lower them. Garrett's out. Family thing. We need someone in that seat. A pause. Does it matter? Marcone's people asked for a rep. We send a rep. Another pause, shorter. A sound that was not quite a laugh. Look, if it goes sideways, we have a clean story. We sent someone. It didn't close. We regroup. Then, trust me. Nobody's expecting her to close it. Nobody's expecting her to close it. She walked back to her desk. She sat down. She opened her laptop. She thought about it for 4 seconds, exactly 4, she counted, and then she started preparing. Not for the meeting they expected. For the meeting she intended to run. Because here is what Phillip Drummond does not know. What Garrett Holloway does not know. What every man in this room who has already decided how this ends does not know. The brief is hers. Every number. Every clause. Every risk structure she built across 3 late Thursday nights when the office was empty, and the problem was interesting and there was no audience, and she could simply be as good as she actually is. And there is one more thing. One detail that changes everything. 6 weeks ago, while building her background file on the Marcone Group, she found something in a 2019 federal deposition that Garrett's research, outsourced to a third-year associate, completely missed. Not a financial detail. Something more important. A behavioral detail. A pattern in how Marcone makes his final decision on deals of this size. What he watches for. What he needs to see before he moves. It connects directly to the lesson his family drew from December 1985. From East 46th Street. From a man who died because the people around him stopped seeing clearly and started seeing what was convenient. She is the only person in this room who has read that deposition. She is the only person who understands what Marcone is actually looking for today. And she is sitting in the offset chair, without a water glass, in a room full of men who sent her here to fail. The dramatic irony is complete. The audience sees it. The room does not. They didn't send her to represent the firm. They sent her to be erased. What nobody here has any way of knowing is that the thing they brought in to erase her is something she wrote herself. There is a specific kind of weight that young black women learn to carry before anyone gives them a name for it. Imani Reese learned it at 21, second year at her previous firm, when she put together a market analysis that her supervisor presented verbatim in a Friday partners meeting. Different slides, same architecture, same 3 core arguments, and received a standing acknowledgement from the managing director. She found out on Monday when a colleague congratulated him in the hallway. She did not say anything. She filed it. She learned it at 23, told she was not quite the right fit for a senior analyst track, 6 weeks after a man she had trained for his first month was placed on that same track. She went home. She sat at the kitchen table. She built something better than anything that firm had seen from someone at her level, quietly, without anyone asking, without any guarantee it would change a thing. It did not change a thing at that firm. She left. She came to Whitfield Capital, where she has spent 2 years building a record that speaks at a volume nobody in this building has yet had the honesty to acknowledge. Not because the record is quiet. Because some rooms decide what they are going to hear before you open your mouth. She thinks about her mother, Celestine Reese, who raised 2 daughters in a 2-bedroom apartment in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, and worked double shifts at Brookdale Hospital for 11 years without once asking the world to acknowledge it. Celestine said one thing to Imani, at the kitchen table, when Imani was 17 and furious about something the world had done and did not yet have the language to name. You do not carry it for them. You carry it for yourself. There is a difference. At 17, Imani thought this was about dignity. At 25, sitting at a table in Midtown Manhattan where nobody has offered her water, she understands it is about something more practical. The weight you carry for yourself becomes yours. It does not belong to the people who placed it there. It is not debt. It is proof of what you can hold. She grounds herself the way she always does, by going to the numbers. Her numbers. IRR on the aggressive scenario, 21.4% over 25 years, indexed. The permitting structure. The staged equity tranche. The downside hedge she built after reading the 2019 deposition. She knows every number the way you know something built in your own time, for your own reasons, with no audience and nothing but the problem in your mind. The chandelier light settles across the room. It finds the satin of her orange dress, the soft sheen of it, the way the fabric holds light at the ruching along her waist, the clean A-line fall over her hips. It finds the soft highlights on her cheekbones and her forehead, and her mother's gold ring. For one moment the whole picture of her is simply visible, a 25-year-old woman sitting in an offset chair at the wrong end of a long table, unbothered by every arrangement this room has made around her. Vincent Caro checks his watch. Not because he needs the time. The younger man adjusts his cufflinks. For one honest second, she thinks about standing. Taking her folder. Walking to that elevator and pressing L and stepping out onto 53rd Street and going somewhere else entirely. The thought is real. She lets it exist. Then she sets it down. Her grandmother, Dorcas Reese, who lived to 91 and said only what she meant, had one phrase for when the world arranged itself the wrong way. You were here before it. Stay after it. Let it be the one that has to explain itself. Imani straightens her folder. She uncaps her pen. She looks at the head of the table. Marcone is watching her. Not performing attention. Just watching, the way a man trained from childhood to see clearly watches something he has not yet fully measured. She is about to give him the measurement. But leaving would have proven them right. And in 25 years, Imani Reese had never once given anyone the satisfaction of that. She opens her mouth, and the temperature of the room changes. Not a figure of speech. Something actual shifts, the way air changes when a current finds a new path, when something static becomes moving. 3 men adjust their posture before she finishes her first sentence. They do not know they are doing it. The proposal before you, Imani says, and her voice carries no apology anywhere inside it, is a 25-year infrastructure and real estate development partnership structured across 3 capital phases. I am going to walk you through all 3. Then I am going to walk you through what happens if this deal does not close, because that analysis is in the appendix. It was not in the version you received last week, and it is the most important thing in this folder. Silence. The younger man's pen lifts from the page. Vincent Caro turns his head by approximately 2 degrees. That is, in the language of men like Vincent Caro, the equivalent of sitting straight up. She continues. Phase 1 is equity acquisition in 3 mixed-use corridor properties on the west side, 10th Avenue between 34th and 42nd Street. Current occupancy rate is 61% of market capacity. That gap is not a liability for investors who understand this market. That gap is the deal. The question is whether you enter it as a partner in the upside or watch someone else position there in the next 18 months. She turns the page. The returns model in Section 2 covers 3 scenarios. Base case assumes current commercial real estate headwinds continue for another 24 months. Moderate case assumes the West Side rezoning proposal passes in its current form, which as of the City Council vote last Thursday cleared its second committee review. She pauses one breath. The aggressive case accounts for the Hudson Yards Phase 3 development, currently in final environmental review, whose approval timeline I tracked through the City Planning Board's public docket over the last 6 weeks. Across the table, one of Marcone's wall men glances at the man beside him. One fast look. The kind that says, "Where did she get that?" She got it from reading everything available. She gets everything that way. The aggressive scenario delivers a net IRR of 21.4% over the full 25-year term. That number holds through 11 separate sensitivity tests, including a full commercial real estate stress scenario modeled on the 2008 to 2010 correction. The quiet man at Marcone's immediate right, the one who writes without looking at the page, sets his pen down. He folds his hands. He looks at her. In this room, that is not a small thing. Marcone has not moved. Flat hands. Absolute stillness. The presence of a man who has learned, from a lesson that cost his family everything it took to learn, that the room always tells you what it is if you are patient enough to let it speak. He has been letting it speak since she walked in. He is not watching the presentation. He is watching her. She reaches the risk section. The risk modeling was built against 8 comparable New York mixed-use development deals from 2005 to 2020. 5 of them underperformed projections. We analyzed all 5. She taps the page once. 3 of the 5 failures traced to the same variable. Not market conditions. Not interest rates. Timeline misalignment, capital deployed before permitting cleared, creating a cost overrun window that none of the deals were structured to absorb. We closed that window. That clause, the younger man cuts in, sharp and fast, was not in the version submitted to us last week. She looks at him directly. No, she says. It wasn't. I added it. When? 3 days ago. After I identified the exposure. The room holds that for 2 full seconds. Walk us through it, says the quiet man at Marcone's right. And she answered without hesitation. And that was the moment the room stopped being theirs. That clause was not in the version submitted to us last week. The younger man says it like a test, controlled, deliberate, the voice of someone who believes that speaking first is its own form of winning. He is testing her. Not badly. What he does not know is that she has been waiting for a real question since she sat down. Correct, Imani says. Because the version submitted last week had a gap that would have cost this deal before the second meeting. She turns to the page. The original permitting language did not account for the West Side Corridor's variance review cycle, a separate 60-day municipal track from standard commercial permitting. That gap creates a capital exposure window of approximately 4 months between Phase 1 deployment and Phase 1 clearance. Without a staged tranche trigger, you carry that exposure at full cost with 0 structural protection. She slides the page toward him. I close the gap. He reads it. Reads it again. The room does not make a sound. And then something shifts. Not dramatically. Not with announcement. The way weather changes before anyone outside feels it. The moment when performing skepticism becomes more work than simply paying attention. A room that stops pretending and starts listening. The man with the concrete jaw, Vincent Caro, reaches for his pen for the first time since she sat down. He draws a slow, deliberate line under something on page 3. The movement is small. In this room, it is everything. Imani does not react. Same pace. Same voice. Not faster because the room is turning, not louder because she finally has them. She never needed them. She needed the work to be correct. The room following is a consequence of the work. It was always going to be a consequence of the work. Returns modeling in Section 2. Dividend waterfall structure. Capital flows back in 4 tranches tied to occupancy and leasing milestones, not calendar dates. Calendar-based distributions are the single most common structural error in deals of this size. You distribute capital against projected performance rather than actual performance. When the market moves, you have already told investors a story you cannot take back. The 10th Avenue properties. The quiet man at Marcone's right speaks for only the second time. His name, she will learn, is Sal Ferrara, 30 years with Marcone, the institutional memory of the entire operation. The 3 Phase 1 properties. Current anchor tenant situation. 2 of the 3 carry anchor leases through 2027. Below market rates, legacy agreements. Termination clauses in Annex C, both triggerable with 18 months written notice and a 22% exit payment. Phase 1 acquisition timing accounts for this. We do not enter until the trigger is exercised and the exit payment is priced into the acquisition cost. Sal writes without looking down. His eyes stay on her. That is the moment the whispering stops. She has been tracking it since she sat down, the peripheral awareness that women who have spent years in rooms where they were not expected to last develop as a matter of survival. The whisper near the far wall stops mid-exchange. The younger man's elbow arrives on the table. Caro uncrosses his arms. The room has not declared anything. It has not performed a shift. It has simply stopped pretending, and in a room like this one, that is the most honest thing that can happen. She opens to the governance section. She built this part last midnight. 2 Thursdays ago. Empty 31st floor, city lights behind her. She built it because she kept returning to one question, not what Marcone would ask for in public, not what his lawyers would negotiate, but what the architecture of every deal he had ever done revealed about how he thought about partnership versus transaction. The answer connected directly back to 1985. To East 46th Street. To the lesson his family spent 30 years carrying. He does not want control for control's sake. He wants to know that the people across the table see clearly. That they are not going to make the mistake Castellano's people made, the mistake of deciding what was in front of them before they had actually looked. She built the governance section to show exactly that. To show that she had looked. That she saw what was actually there. He tapped his pen against the table once. Clean. Deliberate. The entire room froze. He stands. No warning. No preparation. Nico Marcone rises the way water rises, because conditions have changed and it has no reason to stay where it was. He is not a large man. He has never needed to be. Size is one language of power. It is not the most precise one. The most precise one is what happens in a room when a particular person moves, what adjusts without being asked, what quiets without being told, what tracks his movement the way a compass needle tracks north. He walks. Past Sal Ferrara. Past Vincent Caro, who has been beside Marcone through 3 federal investigations and 2 succession crises, and who knows, by the precise change in Marcone's pace, that this is not a stretch break. Past the younger man, who sits up 2 inches without realizing it. Marcone walks the full length of the table and stops at the window. Below, Midtown Manhattan at 10:15 in the morning. Cabs on 53rd Street. A construction crane over a building going up 1 block east. The ordinary machinery of the city running its course, indifferent to everything happening 44 floors above it. He looks at it for 4 seconds. He is not looking at the view. He is looking at a city that taught his family, at significant cost, the most important rule he has ever lived by. The city that in December 1985 demonstrated, loudly, finally, and in front of everyone, what happens when you stop seeing what is actually there and start seeing what you assumed would be there. Castellano's people saw a meeting. They saw a routine evening. They saw what they expected. They missed what was real. 6 gunmen on East 46th Street corrected that misread in about 12 seconds. 30 years later, Nico Marcone runs every room, every deal, every assessment of every person in front of him through the same single filter his father passed down. See what is actually there. Not what you were told. Not what is convenient. What is actually, precisely, undeniably there. He turns. Not toward Imani. Toward the 2 men who have been standing against the far wall since the meeting began. The advanced men? The vetters. The people whose specific job was to tell him exactly what to expect when he walked through that door today. His voice comes at a volume the room has to lean toward. That is not accident. Men with real and practiced authority do not project. They make you come to them. You told me what to expect, he says. Not a question. Not an accusation. A record being corrected. For words that land like a door closing. The 2 men do not answer. Because the answer, the honest one, the one that would explain who Imani Reese actually is against what they described, is an answer that costs something none of them are positioned to pay right now. So it stays unspoken. Filling the room the way a smell fills a room, present, undeniable, impossible to address without acknowledging it is there. Sal Ferrara does not move. He fixes his gaze on a specific point on the table. He has seen this before. He knows that any motion right now, any shift, any signal, any reaching for a glass, is the wrong motion. Vincent Caro's watch has disappeared below the table edge. The younger man holds himself completely still in the way people hold themselves still when they understand that stillness is the only version of them that is not currently making everything worse. Imani watches all of it from the periphery. Not turning her head. Not adjusting her expression. Deep dark brown skin glowing steady under the chandelier light. Naturally curly hair sitting exactly where it was when she walked in. The orange satin of her dress catching the light once as she breathes, then settling. She keeps her face exactly where it is. Not because she is holding back satisfaction. Because this moment is not hers to perform. She did the work. The room is doing what rooms do when the work is real. Her job right now is to be as steady as she has been since the elevator opened. Marcone walks back toward his chair. He does not look at the wall men again. That sentence was complete. In the economy of a man who has operated in this city for 30 years without a single public stumble, complete means finished. Filed. To be addressed in a different room, on a different day, in a way that will not be announced in advance. He sits. He looks at Imani. Full. Direct. The whole weight of his attention arriving the way the attention of men like him always arrives, not asking whether you are ready, just present. Continue, he says. One word. In that word, a direction. An acknowledgement. And something that men like Nico Marcone never offer with ceremony, a correction. His own. For the room he allowed to be built around her before she spoke. He gives her the floor. The silence said more than any confession ever could. She continues. No pause. No adjustment. She picks up exactly where she left off, same voice, same pace, because she did not need this room to rearrange itself before she could do her best work, and she will not perform relief for a room that finally decided to see straight. The governance structure, Imani says, is the section I want to spend the most time on. Not because it is the most complex. Because it determines whether this partnership lasts 25 years or falls apart in year 7 when the incentive structures stop pointing in the same direction. Sal Ferrara leans back by 1 inch. First time his posture has changed since she sat down. Standard partnership structures in deals of this size are written to protect the lead investor's downside and make the operating partner dependent on the lead investor's continued approval for their own revenue. That dependency is invisible in year 1. It becomes a structural crisis in year 8. We did not build that structure. The younger man has both elbows on the table. He does not realize it. The governance model in Annex D gives operating partners real decision authority within defined parameters. Compensation tied to benchmarks set collaboratively, not unilaterally. A sunset provision on lead investor veto rights that phases them out by year 10 in exchange for a proportional equity adjustment. You give up control gradually. You gain equity value in return. The operating partners build something that lasts because they are building something they will partially own. That structure, Sal says quietly, is unusual for a deal this size. It is. It is also why the three comparable deals that used a version of it, Annex E, outperformed their conservative projections by an average of 14% across their full terms. Vincent Caro reaches for the Annex. Before anyone else. Fast. The movement of a man who has just found the thing that matters most to him in this folder. Marcone watches him reach for it. That watch, flat gold, no flash, the kind worn by men who do not need to announce what anything costs, catches the light once as Marcone's hand rests still on the table. He does not reach for the Annex. He watches Caro reach for it. And in the movement of a man he has known for 15 years, he reads something precise and important. She keeps going. Performance benchmarks. Equity adjustment schedule. The sunset provisions legal architecture. The precedent, a 2011 commercial development partnership in Chicago that survived 3 ownership transitions without losing operating continuity because the governance model made continuity worth more than any single party's control. The Chicago deal? Says Sal. Yes. Minority stakeholder dispute. Year 4. Resolved through the collaborative benchmark process. No litigation. 14 months. Operating partner kept their position. Lead investor kept their equity. Both sides were worse off short-term and significantly better off long-term. She turns the page. The same dispute resolution mechanism is in Section 7. Sal sets his pen down flat. He folds his hands. And for the first time since Imani Reese stepped off that elevator, the most careful reader in this room does the thing that in the language of men like Sal Ferrara, 30 years in rooms like this one, is the equivalent of standing up and applauding. He simply listens. No pen. No notes. Just his complete, full attention given the way men give attention when they have run out of reasons not to. Imani closes the main proposal. Pen across the top of the folder. Sits back 1 inch. Not withdrawal. Completion. She is done. The work is in the room. The room now decides. She does not look at the wall men. She does not look at Phillip Drummond's name on the cover sheets across the table. She does not look at the water glass that was never brought for her. She looks at Nico Marcone. He does not look at her when he speaks. He looks at them. And what he said next turned 3 men in that room completely white. What Marcone says takes less than 5 minutes. Nobody interrupts him. Nobody reaches for a glass or a phone or a pen. The room holds the way rooms hold when the person speaking has already decided the outcome and is simply informing everyone else of what it is. His voice stays level. No heat. No rise. The volume of a man who has operated in this city for 30 years by understanding one thing above everything else. The room comes to him. It has always come to him. Because control is not about volume. It is about the complete, absolute absence of urgency. He accepts the deal. Not with ceremony. Not with a handshake staged for a photograph. With the finality of a door being closed, quiet, complete, not available for reconsideration. Then he pauses. Point of contact for this partnership, he says, will be the person who presented today. Sal writes it down. The firm. Another pause. The weighted kind. Will need to demonstrate that its internal structure supports the commitment being made here. I do not enter long-term partnerships with organizations that do not understand the value of what they have. He picks up his water glass. Drinks. Sets it down. That is all. In 2 sentences, without raising his voice, without explaining himself to a single person in that room, Nico Marcone has accepted a 25-year, $300 million partnership, assigned its management to a 25-year-old woman her own company sent here as a placeholder, and told that company, in language that cannot be reread as anything other than what it is, that its place in this deal depends entirely on whether it can demonstrate it understands what it almost threw away. The men from Whitfield Capital are very still. The kind of still that happens when the ground moves and you are trying to locate where your feet are now. Think about what just happened in this room. Phillip Drummond sent Imani Reese here because he believed Nico Marcone was the kind of man who would look at her and see what Drummond sees: a placeholder, a convenience, a name in a slot. He built an entire exit strategy on that assumption. He staked the firm's clean story on it. But Nico Marcone is not that kind of man. He has not been that kind of man since the day his father explained to him, in a kitchen in Queens in 1986, what had happened 1 block from Sparks Steakhouse and why. The lesson was not about guns or power or territory. The lesson was about perception. About the non-negotiable requirement to see what is actually in front of you. Castellano's people looked at the situation and saw what was convenient. They missed what was real. 39 years later, Phillip Drummond looked at Imani Reese and saw what was convenient. He missed what was real. The reckoning does not arrive loudly. It never does. It arrives the way Marcone speaks, at a volume the room has to come to. It arrives in 2 sentences. It arrives without drama or announcement. It has already arrived. Sal coordinates with Imani. Timeline. Legal review. Tranche trigger language. He is efficient, precise, and treats her as the primary contact. Because Marcone's instruction made her exactly that, and Sal Ferrara has done this long enough to know that lagging 1 sentence behind a clear instruction is 1 sentence too many. Marcone rises. A word to Sal, too low to carry. He moves toward the door. The 2 wall men fall in beside him. He does not look back. He is already 3 decisions ahead of this room and has no reason to remain in it. The door closes. The room exhales, not as one sound, but as a series of separate, private recalibrations. Each man accounting for what Marcone's 2 sentences cost him. Imani stays composed. She does not feel triumphant. What she feels is quieter than that. More settled. The feeling of something that was always true finally stated at a volume the world cannot argue with. She knew what she was worth before she walked in. This room just confirmed it. Power does not punish loudly. It removes you silently, and replaces you with the person it was always looking for. 3 weeks later, the agreement is signed. Imani Reese's name is on the front page. Not in the acknowledgments. Not as a secondary contact. As lead partnership director, Marcone Whitfield West Side Development Initiative. A title that did not exist before this deal closed, created because the deal required a title that matched the actual responsibility being carried. Here is the legacy close. In January 1992, 7 years after the shots outside Sparks Steakhouse reshaped the city's understanding of power, John Gotti was convicted at the Eastern District Federal Courthouse in Brooklyn. Not brought down by evidence gathered against him directly, but by the testimony of a man he had trusted for decades. The FBI files from that period note something that gets lost in the headlines about the conviction. Gotti did not fall because someone betrayed him. He fell because he had stopped seeing clearly. He had surrounded himself with people who told him what was convenient rather than what was real. He had made Castellano's mistake. He had looked at the situation and seen what he expected to see. The lesson the city's serious operators drew from 1992 was the same lesson the serious ones had drawn from 1985. The lesson they are always drawing, in every generation, from every version of the same story. The most dangerous gap in any operation is the distance between what a person actually is and what you have decided they are. That gap will cost you. It costs you the deal. It costs you the room. In the worst versions of the story, it costs you everything. Nico Marcone's family drew that lesson in 1985 and sharpened it in 1992, and has carried it as the foundation of every decision made in every room entered since. It is why he sat at that table and watched rather than dismissed. It is why he stopped when his eyes reached Imani's end of the table. It is why, when his advanced men described what to expect and what walked through that door was something else entirely, he did not let the description stand. He saw what was actually there. He always sees what is actually there. Phillip Drummond submitted a formal internal review challenging the partner assignment 2 days after the meeting. The review committee returned its findings in 72 hours. The language used the phrase, demonstrated value, 4 times. Drummond's clean exit story did not appear in the document at all. Garrett Holloway returned from his family matter to a different world. These are not Imani's concerns. She was not copied on any of it. She heard about it from Renata Osei, a senior analyst 2 floors below, who has been watching Imani work for 2 years and forwarded the memo with a single line. Thought you should see this. Imani read it once. Filed it. Moved on. She is already 3 meetings into the partnership. She has spoken with Sal Ferrara 4 times. The Hudson Yards Phase 3 approval timeline is on her calendar. The first trench trigger letter is already drafted. She knows what comes next because she has known what comes next since the second Thursday she stayed late in that empty office, alone with the problem in her mind and the specific freedom that belongs only to people who do the work without an audience. She thinks of her mother. Celestine Reese. Crown Heights. Double shifts. 11 years. Never once asked the world to acknowledge it. Who said once, at the kitchen table, "You do not carry it for them. You carry it for yourself. There is a difference." The weight was never debt. It was proof. It was years of building the kind of precision that cannot be argued with, in rooms that were never designed for her, by a woman who decided early that preparation was the only protection worth having. And on the other side of the table, a man whose family spent 30 years learning the cost of not seeing clearly, finally looked at her and saw exactly what was there. The city moves outside her window. Her mother's gold ring catches the afternoon light. She was never the punchline. Never the placeholder. Never the name dropped into a slot because it was convenient. She was the answer. It just took the right room, and one man trained since childhood never to make the mistake of deciding what was in front of him before he had actually looked, to make that impossible to ignore. They thought they sent a joke into that room. What they really sent was the moment their power ended, and the moment hers began. If this story moved something in you, if you have ever been the person they did not expect, the one they sent hoping you would fail, the one who walked in anyway and delivered something they were not prepared to receive, drop a comment right now and tell your story. Your experience could be the thing that keeps someone else in the room when everything is telling them to walk out. Subscribe to this channel and turn on your notifications right now. Do not miss the next story. Every story on this channel is built around one truth that men like Nico Marcone have known since 1985 and that people like Phillip Drummond will spend their entire careers failing to learn. Real power does not come from the chair at the head of the table. It comes from seeing, clearly, honestly, without convenience, exactly what is in front of you. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. We will see you in the next one.